Hi, and thank you for joining us today. Today we are here with Deb Saunders, the Faith Community Nurse Coordinator, and today she is going to be talking about spiritual wellness. So Deb, I will go ahead and give it over to you.
Well, thank you, Corey. Yes, my name is Deb Saunders, and just a little bit about what we do. I am the coordinator for the Faith Community Nurses or Parish Nurses of Winchester Medical Center and Valley Health. And just to let you know, the Faith Community Nurses are a group of mostly volunteer RNs. They serve congregations and also in their community. And as one of the previous coordinators like to say, the community of the Faith Community Nurse is their congregation, but their work spills out into many areas. So just so you know, and while our focus is on the physical health of those we serve, our overriding purpose as Faith Community Nurses is to support and uplift the spiritual health of our congregations and communities. So today, because my faith tradition is of a Christian perspective, I will examine some elements of what I believe add to spiritual wellness in that perspective. So I'm calling this today a call to care, because I really believe a lot of this care is not only for others, but for ourselves. And we must keep ourselves up in a way that we are able to respond appropriately. And if we don't care for ourselves, that's going to not enable us to do what we need to do. Prior to my taking this position, the nurse who was head of the group, then the coordinator, was Kim Davis, and they actually did a survey, they did a study, they did some research based on self-care and the resiliency during the COVID pandemic, and that paper actually got published. So that was published last spring. And being a part of this group, I've been able to participate in such things, and I find that to be really sort of a healing thing within itself. I believe spiritual wellness begins with the care and feeding of the body, the soul, and the spirit. And there must be focus on our intentionality for what we are doing and how we work to care for ourselves, our body, soul, and spirit. I look at our life in the context of what God has given to each of us. Our body for physical use, our soul, and I believe our soul is a creative center. I think our soul is a place we can work to create a happy space, and it does have this just multifaceted, myriad well of things people can produce or take in and be fed through. It's just amazing what you take in through your soul, I believe. And that's why we call soul food. That's what we talk about, something that really makes our soul feel happy. You know, it's an intrinsic thing. It's not anything we can quantify, I think, but it's definitely there. And then the other part of this is our spirit. And that, I believe, is a mystical part of us. It's a mystical part of us that helps us rise above the things that would tend to bring us down, that we might focus on, and it helps us to see things in an other way, in an otherworldly way. We can be seen, I think, as stewards of what God has given to us. I looked it up on Webster, and it's kind of technical, like the steward is the one who takes care of or keeps accounts. And I think we don't have to be that diligent about it. But I think just in the perspective, we've been given this. And so our job in the care and feeding of this is to figure out how to best take care of this body, soul, and spirit. So our lives are very complex. And I think often we take for granted many facets that go into every second of our day. Through business, distraction, and oversight, we have a lot of things that are happening, and sometimes we are thrown off maybe what we're trying to center ourselves on. I'm going to go over a couple of books here, and I want to say this. First of all, I'm not trying to sell books, but some of the books I have found have really good pieces. So starting with the body part, there was a book called The Daniel Plan, and it was written by Rick Warren, Daniel Amen, and Mark Hyman. And this focus on this book goes into 5 categories. And in the book, they talk about faith, food, fitness, focus, and friends. So I'm just going to start out with food. I think in our society, we have a lot of things that we have to pick from, and many of them are created by companies to sell for what we would call processed foods, and we eat those, and we think they're really sometimes we can get even addicted to something like that. But in the book, Daniel Plan, they talk about the care and feeding of your body from the perspective of trying to eat more whole foods, trying to cook more of your foods, and using more vegetables, fruits, and healthy snacks. Now, in the research I've done, there's also a book it's called What Would Jesus Eat? And it's written by Don Colbert. And he also talks about eating whole foods and better snacks and omitting processed foods as much as possible. He discusses the Mediterranean diet and focuses on healthier food options. And I found this very interesting because recently, when we had our cardiovascular update here through Valley Health, Dr. O'Donnell spoke also about the Mediterranean diet because it also works off of a lot of plant-based foods, fish, and some things that are just more natural options to eat. So I'm not trying to pick a diet for anyone or give dietary advice, but I am saying there are things you can focus on and look at, and what will bring optimum nutrition into your body. Because from a spiritual wellness perspective, also the person that wrote the book, What Would Jesus Eat? I found that was really interesting because not only are they talking about the food, but they're also talking about spiritual components and many of the things Jesus did during his life, and what things were life then and what he would have been eating. Now, the other thing I thought was really interesting in trying to pick these foods that give building blocks for our bodies that might be better. There's a gentleman named James Tate, and you can also look him up on the internet. He's from Maryland. And this is how I found out the book, What Would Jesus Eat? A couple of years ago, I got a health ministry certificate through the Wesley Seminary group out of DC. And they had Mr. Tate on there as a speaker. And his most important thing he had to say was, he read the book, What Would Jesus Eat? And he had gotten to a weight of over 400 pounds. He wasn't able to be active, and he was really looking at what he could do to better himself physically. You can look him up on the internet and hear his story. But anyway, he lowered his weight. He became way more active, and now he is doing all this stuff to help other people with not only just feeling better and having optimal health, but more physical, I would say, like exercise and things too. But that's something I'll talk about here in a minute. The other thing about in this book of the Daniel Plan, they have Dr. Daniel Amen, who talks about brain health. So for our spiritual piece, I think it's really important if we work to try to keep our brain as healthy as possible. But what I found out when I looked at his writing this book with, he co-authored this book, was I had seen him several times on PBS. And his whole lesson is change your brain and change your health. So that's why I say, again, it's a call to care. We need to care about ourselves. And really, he focuses on not only the food part of trying to eat healthy to create that brain health, but also things that could affect us, like the lack of exercise, if we have an untreated illness that's in our body, and also how our lack of sleep or stress or worry might affect us. And it's interesting because we're doing a Lenten study, and last night one of the topics was worry and how worry impacts us and what do we do with that. And scripturally, Jesus says, don't worry, because I think that is so we will take what we have spiritually, we would take that in prayer to him or to God and just say, here's something I need help with. So we don't feel alone at that time. The other thing they talk about is relaxation strategies, and how they also focus on prayer as a part of what could be a relaxation strategies. But I know in the looking at wellness, other options are being offered. So I just say relaxation is a big key in life. When you look at what's happening with Northwestern, they give so many educational offerings, and this group is so dynamic and so user-friendly. So I just say, take your time, listen to what they have to say, because everything they offer is so good. So you just being here and learning is of utmost benefit. Feelings and how we use our thoughts and words can create a more healthy option for ourselves mentally. Again, intention in our words. So intentionally, when I look back, it's like trying to feed our body as well as we can. Because we go back, sometimes it's easier to stop for a fast food option, and that's okay once in a while. But if that becomes all we do, or we're snacking and not eating well, and the other part of this is with the Mediterranean diet, guess what? It's not just what you eat, but socially you're eating with others. So you're providing that time of socialization, and it's just part of a lifestyle benefit of being in community with others. So that, again, is very good. Being thankful. If we can limit the negative thoughts as we have, because they come into our minds all the time, I think that is also considered worry. But if we can limit that, and just, the Bible talks about taking every thought captive. And I think what that means is, as we are thinking that, we go, oh no, maybe I should substitute a different way of looking at this. So I'm not concentrating on the negative thought pattern continually, because if that's what I do, that's not caring for me. So I need to learn how to do that in a better way. I think being grateful. Another thing in the book they talk about is gratitude, us exercising our gratefulness. And they even say they had done studies about, if you just take time to write down 3 things every day you're grateful for, that can also turn your mind to a better place of what we're grateful for. I like one thing where they talk about your attitude, your perception, and your purpose. They have a quote from an author I used to read. His name is Chuck Swindoll, and he says, life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how I react to it. So that is also true, I think. I look at some of my reactions and I think, I'm not sure this is the best way to react to this. So, the author Stephen Covey in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, part of what he says is, God gave us a brain so we can create the space between the stimuli and the response. So when we get that stimuli and the response, how do we react to it? Let that be a thought for us each day. Maybe just take a minute. Somebody used to say, count backwards from 10. Whatever you need to do to sometimes just stop. And I'll give myself that assignment for this week. That'll be my assignment. Now, backtracking again, going back to some of the foods. The other thing that Daniel Amen talks about is sugar, not to fall into the sugar trap. Apparently, sugar is very addictive. When I was young, there was a song called I'm a Junk Food Junkie. I was a junk food junkie. And I have tried to outgrow that. But I did love moon pies a lot.
They are very good.
So I just wanted to throw that in. An occasional moon pie, but maybe not a continuous diet of that. So now again on the Daniel plan, let me just go back. They talk about fitness. In the Daniel plan, they came up with the word, the Daniel plan, because they used somebody from the Old Testament whose name was Daniel. And so you could probably, if you don't know that story, you could go on the internet and you could possibly just like Google Daniel Old Testament, and they would talk about who Daniel was. Well, I will say a shortened version of this, the way I take this. Daniel made choices that affected his health in better ways by choosing healthy food choices. He also chose to honor his faith in God by the choices he made. However, in the Daniel Plan book, they talk about being Daniel strong. So that part comes back to exercise. In the part about brain health, Dr. Amen talks about exercise. I have binged and watched Minimal Mom on the internet and Becoming Minimalist by Joshua Becker. But one of his things Joshua Becker mentions is, and I go back to intention on both of these things, you're trying to figure out, what am I trying to take away that I don't need and keep that I do need in my life? I think that's an assignment for all of us. But in one of his podcasts, he talks about a friend he always had, and every time they'd see each other, and even if it had been years, he'd say, "Are you getting exercise?" And I think I used to be a health failure nurse. I talked to health failure patients, and one of the things we talked about was different things, but it was trying to incorporate some exercise that was intentional so that it's safe for that person. So I would say, if you try to start out with some exercise, you haven't done it for a while, talk with the doctor and see where to start. There's all kinds of plans, just like the wellness center. Go and get an evaluation and see what you should do. But even in the book, What Would Jesus Eat?, the author talks about walking. Now, one of the things I got from my study, because we did it in our church small group of the Daniel Plan, was 2 things I should do for my health. And one was walking. The other was water, because I never drink enough water. So those 2 things I thought was something I could focus on. The other thing that many experts have said, don't try to make many changes at once. Just try to effect a small change at once, like maybe add more vegetables, like maybe look and see how much exercise you're getting and where to start, how much water you are drinking and what to do. When the guy who wrote What Would Jesus Eat? In that book, he looked back and what walking they did in biblical times. I mean, Jesus was walking thousands of miles over his course of his lifetime. So our lifestyles today are different. We're more sedentary, and we have to intentionally, mostly, unless your job entails a lot of physical labor, you really have to intentionally incorporate something to make that exercise happen. So I just throw that out there for the physical fitness part. And they talk about exercise. They use the word endurance, and they also talk about prayerful movements. So if some of you are working with yoga or something like stretching, you could incorporate prayerful times into whatever those moments are, even in quiet moments. So give some thought of fitness, talk to your doctor how to begin or what is the best course. And you may find many wonderful benefits from this. Now, the next part in this book talks about friends. Now, I really like this because going back to the Mediterranean diet, it is community. And I did not grow up in the Catholic Church, but I have found many wonderful things that I love as an outspringing of the Catholic Church. So the picture that is on the screen here, this is a cross on the Isle of Iona in Scotland. And the Isle of Iona is off the coast of Scotland. It is very close, like coming from Ireland. Anyway, it was a monastery, still is there. Geographically, it has a lot of significance spiritually. And the reason I say this is because I think people come together there in community from all areas, and they gather, and it's a spiritual resource. But us getting together in community, you know, the Bible says one of the scriptures is, forsake not yourself from really coming together and getting together. And I think the reason is we have found that we need each other. Saint Benedict, that's another one I've studied from the Catholics. I really love the life of Saint Benedict, but one of his things was, you must do what you do in community, because that's how we learn it. If we go off by ourselves and be reclusive, that we might need some quiet time, but for a long haul and working together, it's good to have support of other people and hear what they say. One of the things they talk about, it's difficult to learn the importance of issues with each other instead of keeping things hidden. We need to be able to talk. We might have things we need to talk through and talk out because of what we've been through. It's not bringing negative to the table, but it's saying, I've had this. Here, even last night in the worry piece, it was like one of the options was ask somebody to pray. text the group and say, pray for this. So we do have that support system. Even exercise, such as walking together, may help create a better system for follow through. Eating meals together or sharing a group with a consistent or more constant thought to healthy eating is more practical and useful way to keep a healthier food choice. In our church, we have had, they break up into what they call dinners for 8. So, you go into a small group and you occasionally meet and have a meal together. So it's just nice to be around others who have a better and positive outlook that can also affect our focus. I don't know if you've ever had a bad day and you go into the group and everybody's like, did you see that sunrise this morning? I saw part of it. I saw part of it, but maybe at that point I was not focused on the beauty of the sunrise. And it's like, that's right. There was a beautiful sunrise this morning. I saw it. And so this can affect our attitude. I think it can help us to make better choices for ourselves, and we may help others in turn to make better choices. So again, it's a call to care. It's a call for us to care about others, and sometimes getting out of our shell and seeing what others go through. That is why I think Mother Teresa was the person who just got out there and exuded life is about helping others. And that's a really important part. It assists us to begin the practice of gratitude and feeling better. So far, we've mostly focused on the physical aspects of food, focus, and fitness and friends. I do want to go back over the attitude of gratitude and the importance of being grateful. I think there's other concepts that lead to spiritual wellness, like taking care of ourselves physically is extremely important. And just a couple of other things I want to talk about for spiritual wellness. I think there's many benefits if I'm coming at it from where I look at it from the faith community nurse piece. I think there's many benefits to having a faith that can help us with our spiritual wellness. I heard a quote in the past that said, faith is the thing that walks in when all else has walked out or all else has failed. And I think so. Why should I wait until extreme times to have faith? Why not just have it all the time? And why not use it all the time? That way you're in practice and you don't have to pull it out as a last resort. And the Bible says we don't really need that much, the size of a mustard seed. And if you look at mustard seeds, they're tiny, tiny little things. And it says in the Bible in Matthew 17, if you have that faith, nothing can be impossible to you, just to have that little bit of faith. I see that as the glass half empty and glass half full kind of idea. Maybe we're looking at it in a different perspective, just to know God is with me or others are there for me in my support system. And then our ability to carry on and be resilient, to hope, to love, to care for others, how we control our responses, and how we approach forgiveness. I just throw this in here about the forgiveness aspect. Okay. The forgiveness aspect, I think, for me, as I have gotten older, has really, I think we know this, but I think I've learned as we go through trauma, as we go through changes, as we've lived around people who maybe didn't have our best interests at heart all the time. And the Bible says, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. At the end of the Lord's Prayer, if you look that up, here's the sticky part. It says, if you forgive others, then I will forgive you. So it's kind of like you're stuck. You're stuck if you don't forgive others. And really, they have learned with research that unforgiveness held in a person's heart really is going to cause that person more damage than anyone else. Because when you're holding on to that, you have lost the focus of caring for yourself or others. And I know there are many things that we could say, this deserves unforgiveness. You could say that. But I think you have to look at your wellness and your spiritual wellness to say, do I really want to take the chance of holding on to this forever? So I would just challenge you with that, with things you've been through. And, if you, whether or not you have a faith tradition, cast them out there as a prayer. How can I work with this? What can I do? I've been through a couple of things in life, and one of the hardest things I went through, I remember saying as a prayer to God, teach me now what I need to know about this, because I don't want to have to go through this again. Teach me now. So I think our teachability, being open for our spiritual wellness, is very important in what we want to hold on to. I have felt this for a long time. It's not what we get rid of, it's what we keep, what we hold on to in life that's so important. So I've had good role models in many aspects of life. I have thanked God for those good role models. Of all the people I had the chance to meet in this life, I met some good ones. I met some that weren't that great, but I felt like those were my teaching experiences, to say these, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, this is not really what I want to do or be. I've learned from this example. So I think that's a part of spiritual wellness, is finding and keeping those things that are helpful for us and help us to care for others. Being that it is St. Patrick's Day, I'll just throw in a little sideline about St. Patrick's because I love St. Patrick. In the story of St. Patrick, what the most exciting part I like about that is he learns to pray. So St. Patrick is really not funny, but I can identify with this because sometimes we walk into a situation with an I don't care, this is stupid attitude, and suddenly we find ourselves going, I don't know if I was right about that. Maybe I need to relook at this. So in the story of St. Patrick, he had no faith. He made fun of his parents' faith. He thought the priests were foolish. And all that went on until, as a youth, he was kidnapped from his life in Britain and taken to Ireland in the middle of nowhere, and he was made to be a slave shepherd boy. Now, here in the middle of nothing, with no distractions and no one to talk with, in the elements of snow, cold, and darkness of night, guess what? Patrick learned to pray. In fact, his faith increased steadily as he found his quiet time with God to become an antidote to the daily living he had of being in the nowhere. He began praying and believing that with God, nothing is impossible. So later he returns home, and I won't go through the whole story, but through this time of being in this slave servitude mode for 6 years, he goes home and he realizes he wants to be educated now in the scriptures, in what God says. So he does. He goes to a monastery in Caen, France, near modern day Caen, France. He learns to learn the word of God and how he can take this to people. And what's interesting is, at this time he was hearing the voice of the Irish people saying, please come back. So he returns to the Irish people and becomes the role of dedicated to them, bringing faith to them, bringing hope to them. And in actuality, St. Patrick, who we now call St. Patrick, his name was Patricius, but he became St. Patrick because that would have been the Celtic pronunciation of his name. And so he brings this to this nation. And at the time, slavery was really manifesting in many places. He was the first person to speak out against slavery. He was a great upholder of women and to empower women. And his words, he came to bring hope and acts of forgiveness. So they would learn that. But it was in the silent places where Patrick found himself that his spiritual wellness came flooding in. We find in many practices, silence is a place to begin. So we find that when we are praying, because we tend to think that we hear people pray, they bring prayers to God, and that's what we mostly see. But he learned that in the silence, it was really important. Now, we have found in modern day times, and I think many people living in monasteries and abbeys and throughout times have realized that what silence does bring. But in silence is when we learn. And one of the quotes from Mother Teresa says that in mental prayer, we speak to God, but in silence, he comes to us. In vocal prayer, we speak, but in mental prayer, he's speaking to God. He's speaking to us. So we can be distracted by many things, but other quotes that Mother Teresa has from the No Greater Love book: souls of prayer are souls of great silence. Listen in silence, because if your heart is full of other things, you cannot hear the voice of God. And then again, all of us must cling to God through prayer. Be completely stripped of everything to dwell lovingly in his presence, silent, empty, expectant, and motionless, because we cannot find God in noise and agitation. So I would say to each one of us, try to find the place where you can be silent. And it's difficult. It is difficult. They talk about getting up early morning, and I'm telling you, in my household, and there's not that many of us, I could be up at 3 a.m. But for some reason, there's still noise and distraction. So you may have to find a special place and carve out a spot for your silent place. And it really is for your well-being to be able to center yourself, to be quiet. You might have to forego a TV show or possibly something on Apple or Hulu. But I'm just saying, take that time. Take time to pray and ask God to teach you to pray. Ask God for silence and the desire to experience that silence. The other thing I think comes out of this, Patrick did this. Mark says, ask, believe, and receive. And St. Patrick received the Irish people as his assignment. I truly believe each of us have an assignment. We don't always know what it is, but God or what is out there will give you that assignment, because you don't know who needs you. You don't know who can use what you've learned through your life or what you're going through now that you think is so terrible that later becomes a learning experience, and you can help other people with things that they may be going through. So come before God silent, empty, and expectant, as Mother Teresa instructs. And when you take time to pray, I don't think you will be disappointed. Start now and keep going. Remember, spiritual wellness is an intentional goal, just as physical wellness. Spiritual wellness encompasses all aspects of the person, touching on the body and soul and your spirit, and let it touch you and reach out to others and care for others.
Thank you so much. I love how you brought up that spiritual wellness can also encompass physical wellness as well as social, because being a part of a community can help build so many other things. And that just kind of helps to show that you need to be rooted in your wellness. And that's why we're kind of going over each of the 8 dimensions this year. So thank you so much for bringing all of that up.
Thank you. Well, I hope it wasn't too much.
No.
But I think it does. Our lives are complex, and there's so many aspects to it. If you had a graph, you would have little arrows coming into yourself from so many different things. So thank you for the opportunity to share.
Absolutely. Thank you again so much.